Shasta Nelson, and super happy to be here today. I have been speaking and talking on loneliness and friendship for a very, very long time. I've written 3 books. My latest book is The Business of Friendship, making the most of the relationships where we spend most of our time. And we're looking forward to talking about social connection. Wanted to start with a piece of some of the best advice I ever got. And of course, it has to be about connection. And it really is the awareness that I received really young in life that was basically everything you do at the end of the day is probably for you to feel connected. And I was thinking about that of all the different schools we want to go to and the cars we want to drive and the promotions. Like at the end of the day, we want all of that because we want to feel loved. And the advice to me earlier on was just like, help people just go straight to what it is they want: the love, the belonging, the thinking they're enough. And so we don't have to jump through as many of the hoops to get there, and just go straight for the thing that we all crave, which is connection. So happy to be here.
Wow. And you said so many great words there. I want to unpack that a little bit because there's so much there, right? You talked about connection and belonging and love and all
Mm.
of that. And we're going to talk about social connection today because the Surgeon General, right, came out with this big report. And I was like, oh, I got to talk to Shasta about this. But let's talk about that, right? Because I think, like you said there, belonging is what we all want. In
Mm.
fact, I saw an initiative the other day. I think it was in the Wall Street Journal that they talked about it's no longer going to be DEI, but DEB, with the B being for belonging. And
Mm.
so I find that so interesting because if I said that word to salespeople, if I said that word to leaders, they'd be like,
I don't
belonging?
want to belong. Yeah.
Like, we're lone wolves, man. We're just going hard, and I want my folks to go after that. But really,
Mm,
I might argue, especially in sales, they want to belong to
totally.
something bigger than them, right? They want to contribute in a meaningful way, especially probably Gen Z. What are you seeing out there, Shasta?
Yeah, totally. It is. And I think it's a hunger. Like I would argue that our need for connection is the same as our need for food. It's like the hunger, our body needs it in order to live. I mean, this is how we are, how we've evolved, and that we know that we're safer. We know that we belong. Like we need that belonging. It's not just like, oh, that would be nice to have, or like, oh, I would love to, do I want to belong? Like it's like asking, do I want to eat? Like, so some people might enjoy their food more than others, but we all have to eat. And it's a necessary, absolutely necessary need. I think a lot of us, we live in a world where we have forgotten some of us don't even know what it feels like to belong. Some of us don't even know, we don't even have a feeling of really, truly feeling loved. Or we've forgotten what it actually feels like. We've gotten used to being the lone wolf or the independent American who's out there like, we can do it all by ourselves. I don't want to inconvenience anybody, and I can prove myself. I can pull myself up. And so I think it's kind of, sticking with a health metaphor, I've seen science that says people don't even know, like, where most of us are walking around dehydrated, and we don't even know what it would feel like to live truly hydrated because we just think this is our normal. And I think it's true for relationships and connections and belonging too. I think we just because it's normal and we're fine and this is how it's always been doesn't mean we aren't wired to feel more support. We want to be more loved. We want to be adored. We want people to care about us and to see us and to want to know more about us. We want people interested in us. And I think in our world in sales and stuff like that too, we walk around and it turns into we want to impress each other. But really at the bottom of that is we want to feel good enough. And that comes down to wanting you to like me. So I think we all want to be liked.
Yeah, that's so cool because we talk about in sales that it's know like trust for sure, but it's not just for prospects. That's for
Mm.
our relationships at work. That's for our relationships outside of work. And I think that actually we did used to belong more because we had the Elks Club and the Moose Club and the PTO and the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and Little League. And now it's like we do this alone,
Yeah.
and we have that illusion of intimacy when
Yeah.
there is no real intimacy.
Yeah, yeah, you're so right. There's so many books and great research coming out on like how much our loneliness has been increasing. And the US Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, came out a couple of weeks ago and named loneliness as the #1 public health issue of our time right now. That this is over almost about 60% of us report feeling lonely on a regular basis. And this has been steadily kind of increasing over time. And to your point, we've seen a decline in all these different social organizations. And we've seen a decline in so it's correlated a lot with like the invention invention of the TV. And then with every time that technology, because it used to be before the TV, I mean, I wasn't around, but apparently legend has it that it used to be that people, like, leisure activities were meant to be done socially. You did leisure. It was something you do with others. You'd sit out on your front porch and talk to neighbors. You go to the tennis club, you go to the elk club. Like, leisure time meant doing things with others for the most part. And it wasn't until the invention of the TV where leisure time became something you did inside by yourself, and kind of we started kind of pulling away. And and then you add iPhones and all the other things we've got now, and you can just kind of see we've got so many more options to just be by ourselves. But with like, I love your statement. It's we feel connected. We feel more connected. In fact, though, some of the loneliest people right now are some of the most connected people. We're seeing the people who are most networked, or the people who in sales. We see a lot of loneliness in sales because salespeople are spending so much time taking care of the social needs for so many other people, and interacting and loving, and how's your life going, and and all the good stuff we do to relate and connect. But at the end of the day, we've given so much, people in customer service, people in healthcare. We've got a lot of people who have great people skills and are so friendly and are like adding value to so many other people's lives, but feel lonely because at the end of the day, they still don't feel like anyone really knows them. So we can know a lot of people and not feel known.
Yeah, for sure. I think about my dad. My dad is he still grinds stumps. He's 76 years old. He grinds stumps and fixes small engines, but he doesn't have the internet. He does have a TV. He seldom watches it. He's got probably 10 or 12 channels now, because a lot of things are digital, so they come through the air, and he's got an old, antenna there that he gets. But everything he does, when he meets people, he has to talk to them, and they talk back, and often they'll invite him into his home. And when he goes out networking, right, he goes to the bar and hangs out.
Yes.
And they spend a few hours there, and they talk, and they pour into each other. As Buddy Miller, they're always connected, and there's so much belonging. And then he's got the Lions Club. He's part of that. And I think about that, and then sadly I contrast that with my mom, who I love dearly. My parents got divorced when I was very young, but mom doesn't have any of that social network. And I know that loneliness. I mean, thankfully, I FaceTime her a couple times a week. I know one of my brothers calls her all the time as well, and we stay connected, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
There's no real like, she's part of my family, but she's not here.
Yeah.
Right? She's back in Wisconsin, and that's really tough. That's
Yeah.
got to be, I can't imagine that. And now salespeople, right? They used to have their bullpens, and they would spend time together, not just to bounce ideas off, but to share energy and to give a crap about each other. And I know early in my career, going to I didn't drink coffee until I was like 25 years old, not because I liked coffee, but because I would go, and that's where all the action was happening.
Yeah, that's where people were hanging out.
Belonging. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool. Well, yeah, we are missing a lot of those. We're missing a lot more of us work remote. We are a lot more isolated in our homes. We have less leisure time, we feel like. So there's a lot of contributing factors. But I think one of the biggest ones, and I'm so grateful you're talking about this subject, because I think one of the biggest issues even is that we have this stereotype of what loneliness is. And so we often don't think we have it. And because we're like, I'm not isolated. I'm not like your mom. I have friends. We sit there and go, I know people. I'm around people all day. In fact, I'm tired of being around people, or I've been talking to people all day long. And we don't notice that we actually don't feel as connected and as intimate with people. And so I often say today's loneliness usually isn't for lack of isolation, it's for lack of intimacy. And for most of us, I always ask people to just do the little assessment. You know what hunger feels like that your body sends you a message when you feel hungry. That your body sends you a message by yawning when you're tired. And do you know the message your body sends you when it needs more connection? And most of us have kind of just tuned out and are ignoring that message. And what's damaging about that is, we would say it's not bad for you to be hungry or thirsty. That's your body telling you a message, go get the need met. But if you don't go get the need met, that's where not eating or not drinking water or not sleeping can actually kill you literally and take, damage your health. And the same is true for loneliness. And it is doing its number on our health. That's why it's a public health issue. And we can talk about some of the statistics and stuff, but it's a matter of longevity. It's a matter of immune system. It's a matter of bringing our stress levels down. And so if we're ignoring the warning signs, if we're ignoring the message, then we are less likely to do what we need to do to get the need met. And it continues to have like a chronic damage. So I think it's really important. Like I always ask, just do a quick assessment on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most fulfilled, the most satisfied. How fulfilling and satisfying do your relationships feel right now? And just kind of do a little check, do I have do I feel good about the number of relationships? Do I feel good about the quality of those relationships? Do I feel good about do I have people that I can be really, really honest with? And do I have people in different areas of my life focusing on different interests? Do I have people when I go to this religious organization or when I go to work or when I drop my kids off at the school? Like, do I feel like I have enough relationships in those places to belong? And so it's really important to kind of do an assessment and kind of like ask, am I hungry? Where am I hungry right now? So I think that I would be so curious from you working with salespeople all the time. How would do you see loneliness, and like, does it look different than we have a stereotype of it? Like, what would be some of the ways you would see whether somebody's lonely potentially or not?
Well, it's interesting because I don't know, we don't talk about it. But
Mm-hmm.
observationally, I can say that because we don't go into the office as much, that we're not as fulfilled. That and believe me, I love the remote work. I think it's great that I don't have to commute an hour each way. That makes me super happy, and I know a lot of people for that. That's great. But that time hasn't been replaced,
Yeah.
and so it's different because we don't often get down to talking about what really matters. I can tell you that on my sales enablement team, we spend time connecting every week. We're super intentional about
Good.
that, and we put time on each other's calendars to just catch up and to see how we're doing. And it's interesting that I feel the most connected here that I've felt since long, like probably 15 years ago. And the sales, I can only speak for the collegiality of the sales leaders that I work with, because I work more with the leadership team than and then new salespeople, more than I'm working with the experienced folks in a group.
Mm-hmm.
I coach them one on one, but in the leadership group that I'm in, it's clear that they spend at least some time caring about each other beyond that, even if it's just the first 3 to 5 minutes of a check-in call.
Yeah.
And
Good.
it's so interesting, because some of them live close and you can tell that they live close to each other, and some of them, like, I bet they've never met each other. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting, how that shows. So, but again, just anecdotally, I can see the loneliness there because we're not quite sure yet who we can trust at work, because we don't, I mean, time matters. It's not just, oh great, I've got 600 friends, but how long have we been friends, and what can I trust you with, and do you trust me back? I mean, because I can't just pour because I feel like I'm complaining then.
Yeah.
We have to have an even match. I mean, your pyramid or triangle is really helpful. I think about that often, that you can't race to the top if the other person is still at the bottom, right? You have to slowly go up together. And I think that's super important.
It is. It is. That's what the work I do in companies is trying to accelerate the time by informing us of like what are the elements and helping facilitate the practices that basically create high trusting, resilient relationships, because we know we need to trust each other to like do the big things we want to do in the world, and to be like to do our sales and to make the products and do the services. Like we have big missions and we've got hard obstacles and big challenges, and it's like we need the high trust. We need to know we can rely on each other, and that's one of the hardest things is how do we bond? How do we create that bond? And that's where you were mentioning that triangle. So when we look at all the different science of, I was looking at all the different social studies that have been done on what builds trust, what helps us feel close to people. I created kind of the science of bonding. And those are the 3 things that we see in every single science study of what creates meaningful relationships. And those are positivity, consistency and vulnerability. And we can break those down more if you want. But yeah, so you're speaking to the consistency piece a little bit, where it's like the consistency means we have to log the hours together. We have to see each other. We have to spend time with each other. We have to actually interact. We have to create shared memories. We have to build history. And that is the time we spend. As we spend time together, so too do we build trust with each other, because we start having a sense of being able to predict, like when I text Phil, he's always really good at texting me back. So weirdly, without us thinking about it, I start trusting Phil to text me back, and so we start building a little bit of trust with each other as have you behaved in the past. My brain will believe that's how I can trust you to behave that way in the future. And the more we feel like we know each other, and the more patterns we see of each other, that's kind of the way we start trusting. I trust that person. Last time I shared with them good news and they cheered with me. I kind of think they'll do that again. I don't have to be worried about whether they're going to be jealous or kind of take me down or undermine me. And so we start building trust by how we see each other behave, and that consistency matters. And our workplace is the place to build, like that is the place we're most consistent still. It's kind of like what school was to us when we were kids. The workplace is to us as adults. So this is our playground for connecting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll definitely go deeper into your three components there. I just brought up though that this survey here that came from the American Perspectives survey from the Survey Center for American Life, and it says that in 1990, only 3% of men said that they had no close friends. 40% had 10 or more. In 2021, 15% of men said that they had no close friends, and only 15%, then a decline of 25%, said they had 10 or more. And that's super interesting, because I think part of that is because we're getting older as a population, right? We have more older people in that, even though that wasn't that long ago. I think we have that. And I think secondly, sadly, guys are still not wired to open up. They're still not wired to really share and to trust another guy. It's almost like a bad thing, if like a weakness, if they share. And I guess that gets to your vulnerability point. Is that in line with the studies that you've seen as well?
Totally. And then, but one of the other studies I've seen is that then if you ask the men, who do you confide in other than your romantic partner, then the numbers drop even. Like then you're talking about men, like 15 to 20% of men having close people that they're confiding in outside of their partner. So this is one of the reasons why I say, I think, and this is just theory, but I think men remarry after death and divorce faster than women, because one of the only places we have culturally made acceptable for men to be vulnerable is in a romantic relationship. And so a lot of men don't have a whole bunch of other close men to go be really close to. And so they end up jumping into another relationship. Like women have been the people who culturally, this is not because we're better at it. It's not because we need it more. It's because we've culturally been encouraged to practice vulnerability and build these friendships. And we've treated friendship like a women's issue and like the girls' night out and all this kind of stuff. Whereas a lot of men's activities and men's relationships have been built around activities. And so when you look at the triangle of positive emotions and consistent time, we've said that's okay for men. We're okay with you golfing regularly, meeting up at the club, or watching games together, football, like doing things and having a good time. So you're spending time and you're enjoying it. But for lack of vulnerability, those relationships don't feel all that meaningful. And I think of a story of a man who I was on book tour, and he came to Barnes and Noble, and it was like mostly all women in the audience. And you could tell he was a little uncomfortable sitting there. And so he was standing kind of in the shelves off to the left of me. And, that was an hour-long talk and Q&A. And he was like, every time I'd kind of make eye contact with him, he'd quickly try to pretend he wasn't really attending, but he was attending. And, just kind of standing off. And after I did all the hugs and the photos and the autographs for everybody, I mean, he waited around forever, and he came up to me and he just said, I don't know if I have good friends. And he was just like, I mean, of course I do. I think I do. And he started being like, I mean, I play poker with the same guys. I'm still in touch with my high school friends. Like, he's naming all the things, but his wife had been diagnosed with cancer a few months earlier. And he was just kind of feeling like maybe he didn't have good friends because he didn't feel like any of them it was safe to talk about. He didn't want to bring the mood down at poker. He didn't feel like it was appropriate to just bring up right before they hit the ball playing golf. Like when they're at the bar with their buddies, everyone's there to cool off and like blow off steam. And so he never felt like there was a place for him to open up, and he was feeling bad. And I said, you probably have great friends. Like, it's not a matter of you need to go make new friends. You just need to practice vulnerability with your friends. And I know that's really hard because we live in a culture where that is has not been modeled well. We haven't encouraged it well. We haven't given permission, but men are dying earlier than women. And I think it's a huge part of this because we're made to feel connected. And when we feel lonely on an ongoing basis, it takes years off our life. So it really does matter. I think you've pointed to something really, really important, that it's not okay to just have a social life. We want men too to feel really seen and connected and close to people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I read studies that say that loneliness is as bad as smoking cigarettes in some
Worse.
cases, like
Yeah.
taking, yeah, or worse, yeah, taking years off your
Yep.
life. And you talked about the, when do I bring this up? That's a massive question. But then you said a word that I think men need to hear, and that's
Hmm.
practice. You're not going to be perfect
Hmm.
at this. There is no perfect time. There is no right time. I mean, to share that your wife has cancer, or that things are happening with you and your world. I mean, there is never a perfect time. So just
Yeah.
practice. Just come out of your shell and say, hey, you know what? This is happening.
Yep.
This is hard.
Yep.
I need some help.
Yep.
I just want to share this with you. I don't even maybe need you to do
Yep.
anything, but just hold space for me and be present. And I think because we don't know the right words, I'm using air quotes here, we don't do it. We want to be perfect. Okay, so I'm thinking Sunday morning, 10:17 a.m. That's the perfect time. Oh, and it's gone, and I missed it. Crap. I got to wait another week. And it's
Yep.
like, hey, just reach out and talk to someone,
Totally.
right? Spend some time. And that reminds me that I've got a dear friend from high school. We don't talk nearly as much as we should, but he texted me back about 2 weeks after I texted him. He's not great at text, and he's like, well, you should give me a call. And I'm like, to your point, I'm waiting for the perfect time, and I'm aware that that's wrong.
It
So I can only imagine how hard that
is.
is for folks that are not aware that it's
Yeah,
wrong.
it's so true. It has to be a value. It's almost like I compare it to like exercise. So a lot of us understand the value of being consistent at the gym. So we understand like this is so perfect because you understand if you go to the gym once a month, you could come home and be like, I don't know if it's really working. It's not that meaningful. I'm not seeing any results, right? And so it doesn't feel like that great because you're just doing it once a month. And so I think a lot of us are used to like seeing friends and catching up and doing updating, once every couple months we have lunch or we see each other, and it's not that meaningful and it's not that compelling, and you're like, I don't know if I need more of that. But the interesting thing is the more you're talking to somebody, the more meaningful it becomes, because when you look at the triangle, it has to be built on a positive. We want to have positive emotions. We want to feel like affirmation and love and validation and laughter and empathy and the things that leave us feeling good. We want to enjoy each other. We want to enjoy our time. Then as we practice consistency, as we move up the triangle, as we increase our consistency, so too should our vulnerability increase. So I'm not asking anybody just to like meet somebody and just be vulnerable. But what we should be doing is being mindful that every time we're spending some time together, we should be sharing a little bit more about our lives and who we are. And then it should feel good. We should thank the other person for what they shared. And we should appreciate learning that and responding in a way that leaves them feeling good for having shared. And then next time we see them, we want to make sure we're both learning a little bit more about each other. And those three things just keep happening in cycle and matters. One of the comparisons I make too about the gym is not only the more often you do it, the more meaningful and the more results you see, but the other one is when you go to the gym, when you want to be in physical shape, you understand that you're going to sweat a little bit. So we don't stop. We don't sit there and go, oh my goodness, I'm sweating. This is bad for me. I need to stop. Like we actually know that we're going to go sweat. We actually know that we're going to lift bigger weights and it's going to hurt and it's going to be hard. We actually understand, in fact, that we're going to tear our muscles a little bit. Like when you just think about that, like we go to purposely tear our muscles knowing that it's going to build our muscles up. And so we understand that physical health is on the other side of physical exertion. And yet something around our social health, I notice that as soon as it gets a little sweaty, a little awkward, it's just a little hard, it's going to take some time, it makes me feel a little uncomfortable, we just pull back and we just think this isn't good, this isn't fun. So we're waiting, to your point, we're waiting for all the stars to line up and for it just to be easy and for like good health just to come to us. And yet when it comes to our social health, we absolutely have to practice this. We have to incrementally, in safe ways, practice lifting heavier weights because we want to be so strong. We want to have relationships at the top of the triangle that we have like trained for, and we've put in the effort and we have practiced this and we've done it in a safe, meaningful, fulfilling way. But we absolutely have to lean in and start lifting those weights, because if we want to feel the benefits of social health, then we are going to have to practice doing all three of these things. And for each of us, one of those three things is going to be at least more challenging than the others. For some, we've been kind of talking about men and vulnerability. For sure, that's a cultural one. But for a lot of us, it's consistency. It's actually prioritizing a few people and making the time and scheduling that time in and valuing that and making sure that we're spending enough time. And that's not always just little windows of time and just rushed time and just once every few months when I can fit you in. And for some of us, it's positivity. That one is consistently one of the highest ones of need of the, like, it's the lowest one often. So it's like the top one that most of us need to rely on. And that is that if people aren't enjoying being around us, if we aren't practicing gratitude, if we're not practicing our own happiness, if we're not practicing the things that leave us lit up, then if people don't enjoy being around us, they're not going to want to spend time with us unconsciously or consciously, and they're not going to want to be vulnerable with us. And so it's really hard to practice consistency and vulnerability if we're somebody who's constantly bringing the mood down, leaving people feeling like judged, not sure what we're thinking about them. If they don't feel liked and loved when they leave our presence, they're not going to want to do the other two things with us. So we all kind of have an area where we need to be like, what's the muscle that I need to like practice building up a little bit more, I think.
That's so good to hear that all three of them are a practice, right? That we can practice being more positive. We can practice being more consistent, even though sometimes that's a struggle. We can practice being more vulnerable. And the fact that it helps us be happier because we open up, the fact that it gives us energy because we get to be more grateful and be there. I think that's probably the non-obvious impact of social connection that a lot of people don't get, is like, okay, it's great. Oh, I network. Oh, that might help me get a better job or get better, make more money. That's nice, right? Or it might, oh, I might get married and I might have a family. Well, that's good too. And I'm not poo-pooing any of that, but just friendship is a big thing, and it can be platonic. Like there doesn't have to be an end to this, right? Like you can actually go deep and say, I love you, man, without making it weird. And I think that's tough for a lot of guys to really wrap their arms around. And I mean, and even, and I mean, obviously I can't speak for women. I'm not one, but I would imagine that's hard for women too.
It is because we all want to be loved. I mean, you go back to the triangle, we all want to feel good. And if we are afraid that by sharing something vulnerable isn't going to leave us feeling good, or if we're afraid we're going to be judged or seen as weak or seen as needy or whatever our fears are, too weird, too logical, whatever the things are that we're afraid of, then we don't want to actually be vulnerable. But that's where a relationship, if we have to do all three, that when we are vulnerable, we have to then make sure we're making sure that that feels good, how we leave it. And that's the appropriate thing is, does this situation call for empathy? Does it call for celebration? Does it call for validation? Does it call for laughter? What can I do here to say thank you for sharing that part of you? I loved learning that about you. And then having to kind of keep doing it. But happiness is what we're all like wanting at the end of the only reason any of us want to have friends is in some unconscious level. Like nobody ever comes up to me and goes, will you help me make more friends? I feel like I need more responsibility in my life. I feel like I need more judgment in my life. I feel like I need more people, ignoring me. Like when we want friends, it's because we want good feelings. We want to have people to enjoy life with. We want to feel accepted. We want to have people to talk to and all the good feelings. And so that's really what we're aiming for. And to your point of happiness, the Dr. Niven, he wrote a book on happiness, and he talks about taking all the research on happiness, and he concludes 70% of our happiness comes down to our relationships. So you think about everything else today, anybody listening, of what are the things you think you need to be happy? And we'd be like, I need that trip. I need to be down to that dress size. Those pant sizes. I need to have my kids in this school. I need to go on this vacation. And like, I need. And we think of all the things we think will make us happy. And that adds up to 30%. It's like virtually impossible. Like if we really want happiness, we're way more strategically smart to go after meaningful relationships. They do more for our happiness. They do more for our mental health, our physical health than almost anything else. Like this is For those of us listening who are like strategic people who just want to live successful lives, I can guarantee you at the end of your life, the people who report back, and we've all heard these cliches, but we look back and we feel good about the hard things we did with the people we liked. And we want those relationships. We want to go through life with other people. And those are the things that really, really matter. So we get distracted in life, but this is the stuff that matters.
Yeah, 70% of happiness comes down to meaningful relationships. That's encouraging though, because it's a practice. It's not an accident that people get better at relationships. It's not an accident that positivity, consistency, and vulnerability occur. I don't want to say happen, because it's not like a lightning bolt comes from the sky and here we
Wouldn't it be
go.
nice?
But it is an intentional choice, right? Well, I don't know, right? I actually think the contrast actually helps us appreciate it
That's
more.
true.
Like if it were that easy, right? If it was just, hey, you know what, Shasta, if we meet up 1 hour a month, like we're best buddies. That's not how any of this works, right? We need that frequency, that consistency, and we need to leave people feeling good. And sometimes we have to be vulnerable.
Yep.
And sometimes we have to accept other people's vulnerability. I think that's the other missing part here that maybe we'll close up with this one, and that is sometimes it's uncomfortable to hear other people's pain too. Like, I don't know, my buddy Tim McDonald just this week got his liver. He had a liver transplant. And I can't imagine that every day he actually is comfortable sharing about his liver transplant. And I am not at all comparing me being a bystander to Tim getting a liver and having cancer and now hopefully being Ned, right? That is not what I'm saying. But it is awkward and uncomfortable and challenging to hear somebody share something hard. And I think we avoid that awkwardness because like it's almost like we don't want that burden.
Yeah.
Is that what you're finding as well, or what do you think,
I think
Shasta?
we don't like it because it makes us feel like we don't know how to fix it. But if we understand the triangle, this is where I think it's hopeful, is that when somebody's vulnerable, my only job is what can I say or do here to make them feel better about who they are and their life. My job is not to fix it. I don't need to give good advice. I don't need to be worried about how I'm responding, other than what can I do right now to make sure this person knows I love them? What can I do right now? Does this situation call for empathy? I can do that. Does it call for like, and so we don't have to, I think we're uncomfortable because we don't know how to fix things, or we don't know how to sit sometimes in yeah, in discomfort. And I do want to clarify too, that vulnerability isn't just about shame and pain. That is certainly a piece of it. I find that more people struggle to be vulnerable when it comes to the highlights of their life. More people struggle to talk about the things they're proud of. More people struggle, like when you're with a group of women, with one person starts talking about how stressful her kids are, you just kind of watch the room, everyone starts going that way, and you don't want to be the woman who's like, I'm loving my kids right now. And so it's like, to be relatable, we sometimes feel like we have to kind of just focus on the hard things in our lives. And sometimes being proud and talking about what we're celebrating is more vulnerable. So when we're talking about vulnerability, it's just letting people see different parts of our lives at different times, the good, the bad, the hard things. It's just our opinions about naming a restaurant we want to go to. It's just being able to be willing to have ideas and opinions. In the workplace, vulnerability is like, comes down to brainstorming and like so many things that are like, it's really, you have to be really safe to feel like you can throw out a harebrained idea and not be judged for it. And so that's part of vulnerability too. It's just kind of making sure that we're willing to be expressed and feel like we'll be accepted when we're seen. But I think as a receiver, I hope that the invitation is just, what can I do in this moment right now to assure this person that they're still accepted? That what they're sharing with me, I still love them. I still like them. I still see them, like whatever's appropriate for that relationship. Your goal is just to say, I see you and you're okay. Like, I love you right where you're at. And I'm with you through this, like the cancer scenario. It's just like he knows nobody can fix it. There's no words that anyone can say that will make it feel better, other than just to be like, I'm with you through this. I see you and I witness you and I want to hear about your journey and I'm open to it. I can take it. I want to, like, if you need a place to talk about it, I can hear it, and just to be able to be a presence, I think.
That's a great place to leave folks here, Shasta. Be present even if it's uncomfortable. It's okay to show up. You don't have to expect to fix it. You can just be present and practice. Practice positivity, practice consistency, and practice vulnerability. So friends, if you're watching, if you're listening and you want to get to know more about my friend Shasta Nelson, her work on friendship is unbelievable. Friendship in the Workplace is fantastic. When that book launched, I eagerly jumped and wanted to
You were
help her with
so
that.
helpful.
Love the book. Thank you. Yeah, and it's a great book. Friends, if you haven't picked it up, I encourage you to, and I really encourage you to get to know Shasta more. ShastaNelson.com is her website. She's got lots of great stuff. Think about that triangle, friends. Think about positivity, consistency, and
You
vulnerability.
got
And remember, it's a practice, not a perfection.
it.